Detours. Brought to you by Sports and Spokes, the magazine for wheelchair sports and recreation. In 2022, Dutch hand cyclist Geert Schipper set the 1-hour indoor track record for men by riding 29.385 miles. Determined to set the bar high for women in the hand cycling world, Austrian athlete Svetlana Moskovich recently pushed the limits of her body to an incredible ride of 22.157 miles. Svetlana, welcome. And wow, I just can't even believe that you rode that far and that hard for an hour.
I'm so happy to be here chatting with you about my hour record. Yeah, it's been quite a ride, I should say, for an hour all out. And honestly, Geert Schipper, he inspired me, and I've learned a lot from him. And we've been on the chat with him, asking the details, how he did it, what gearing, and all the stuff. And I'm happy I could be the first woman to do that hour record in the hand cycle on the velodrome.
Svetlana, I have to imagine that, right off the top there had to have been a lot of things that came into play, your initial plans. So when you sat down with your crew, and this obviously took a lot of people, it wasn't just you, there were a lot of people involved. How much strategy went into organizing being able to go that fast for 1 hour on the track?
Well, honestly, it was one woman show at the start. It was my idea, and I didn't really know where to begin with. And then working on that project, the team came up, and indeed we have discussed and planned a lot of pacing strategy. We have worked a lot on the setup of the bike, on the best tires that would go faster on the velodrome, on the wooden track. We picked up the best aerodynamic setup for me that works, that I'm the most efficient with my power. And nutrition, organization, management, that all came in. And I'm happy to have the big team around that project.
When you were so you're talking about, your equipment and aerodynamics and all of that, but when it comes down to it, it's really where the tire meets the track. So did you go through a series of, selecting tires and the proper pressures and all those different things? Because you're not always riding on a flat on the velodrome. Periodically, you're up on the bank to a degree. So there had to have been a lot of things that came into play. Were there a lot of equipment decisions?
Indeed. We've done a lot of testing. I think I've spent 14 days on the velodrome with the coach, testing different tires, tubular tires, clincher tires, different pressure that works for me the best with my weight distribution on free wheels on the tilted surface, which you are talking about. So we tried different front wheels, rear wheels, cambered rear wheels, straight wheels with zero camber, and final different bikes. So I'm so happy I could collaborate with the bike manufacturer, with the wheels manufacturer to find the best setup for me.
I noticed when I watched a portion of your ride that obviously the velodrome goes up quite high, and which is something a hand cycle couldn't possibly do, is go up too high on a bank. But you rode quite far down low. So I saw there was more or less a black and a red stripe, and you tried to more or less, seemingly in my eyes, position yourself right into that sweet spot.
Indeed, that's the right notice you've done. Like the rules say, I have to stay with my front wheel in that corridor between the red and the black line, and that strange position on free wheels on the tilted surface is really painful for the upper body. And the faster you go, the less you feel it. But with my speed of around 36 kilometers per hour, like 22 miles, I guess you said, it was the best line for me to just to keep the momentum and to feel comfortable on the tilted surface.
Was the goal between you and your crew and your coaching staff to keep you at sort of a maintained speed, or did you plan to have certain laps that might be faster than others where you had to pick it up to gain pace?
That's right. We've planned the pacing strategy starting kind of reserved and like the pace, which I would say it felt really almost too easy for me at the start. And you would want to go faster, as we are used to do in the time trialing or road races, which are more intense. But that's the key point, just to be a little bit below that sweet spot and to be able to accelerate in the second half and just not to lose all the advantage of the ride you've done before. So it kind of like that hour felt quite okay because I was really following that strategy we've worked out, and just the last 5 minutes were the hell, but that's how it should be.
I have to assume, because this is such a scientific mark, that you had an idea of exactly where you wanted your heart rate at most times. So what was the highest your heart rate ever got to, and where was it that you were trying to keep it at?
Well, honestly, I didn't switch on my cycling computer because like on the track cycling, the rules say you cannot really watch your parameters. And mostly we follow the watts when we train or we do the racing. The heart rate is kind of the secondary parameter on in hand cycling or in endurance cycling. And the basic parameter was the gear and the cadence. So I didn't really know. I didn't have any numbers except for the time of the lap. Each time I passed my coach, he gave me the reference of the times. So I had to count my revolutions to keep the right cadence, to keep the right speed, because that's the only reference I could do, just to trust my feeling and do this counting, because it was the fixed gear. So I had that one gear for the whole ride. And it was about the revolutions that could change the intensity.
Did you ever feel at any point that you were overextending yourself, like you were going too far into the red?
Yeah, I did feel at one lap because that I'm shooting over, because it was a little bit of confusion and misunderstanding. Like 5 minutes before the finish, I heard the bell ringing, and actually it was the sign for me for the last lap. That what we've discussed before I started into the race, and the race commissary, he told me, okay, when you hear the bell, it's the last lap you're gonna do. You have to finish it and just keep going in case for us, in case to measure the distance through that hour in the correct way. So I heard that bell, and just I just had the reference from my coach for each lap, so I didn't know it's the final lap, but it was the sign for me. So I went all out on that lap, and I shaved like half a second, which is pretty much on 250 meters, the acceleration. And then the coach told me, it's not the end. I have to keep going. I still have like 5 minutes to go. It was some confusion. I think somebody from the audience just was supporting me with the bell. So it was like, what's going on? And a little confusion for that lap. And that kind of killed my arms. With the gearing I had, I was so lactic acid and just so tired. It was like I don't know, them like iron metal, just was so like those 5 minutes were the hardest ones.
Yeah, I've heard triathletes refer to that as bricking, when your arms get so heavy that you can hardly move. So, hey, I want to talk a little bit about heart rate again, but you brought up food. So preparing as you were going in, were you doing, the final, as you reached your final preparation days, were you doing a high level of carbohydrate and doing fluid intakes with electrolytes and things like that? Or were you more protein oriented? What kind of things did you do to prepare for this one specific hour, food wise?
Yeah, the energy resource is basically carbohydrates for the kind of effort for the hour. So I did do the carbo loading, the 3 days, like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and the trial, and my record attempt was on Saturday, and Thursday, Friday, I just had the normal distribution of the macro elements like proteins and carbs in normal way. So that was my strategy. And just before, like eating rice before the trial and drinking a lots of carbohydrates, but not exaggerating, because that feel of being thirsty, that sensation is not very good for 1 hour, because I couldn't make any intakes, like I couldn't drink or eat anything through that hour.
We'd like to take a minute to thank our sponsor, Sports and Spokes magazine. For nearly 50 years, they've produced stories on iconic athletes performing at the top of their game, given generational coverage of sports dating back to the 1970s, and they've shown the way with exciting and timeless magazine cover shots. To stay on top of all the latest news from the world of high-performance adaptive sports, go to sportsandspokes.com. Sports and Spokes, the magazine for wheelchair sports and recreation.
So I do want to get back to heart rate, but really one more question about nutrition. So when it comes down to the final stretch, the day of the event, what time was the actual event?
It was at 2 p.m.
So 2 in the afternoon. So as you wake up that day in your final food preparations, is it a lot of fluids, a very carbohydrate-y meal? Leading into it? Or, I mean, did you consume a lot of calories, or just enough calories that you thought you could get the record?
Well, the plan was to consume the amount, like the right amount of the calories and the right amount of the carbohydrates. But in reality, I woke up really with a headache, really anxious about the trial, with a lot of pressure psychologically. So the plan was to take care of myself, to hydrate and to eat the right stuff. But I really didn't even could swallow anything. So I was really so anxious, nervous and anxious, because so many people worked for that particular moment, and I felt a lot of pressure on myself. And the unknown of the trial really drove me crazy. Like, how it's gonna be? Maybe I will stop on the half an hour because I'm like, I cannot endure it anymore. That big unknown really wasn't a pleasant feeling.
So as you probably know, Brandon Lyons set a 24-hour record in Florida just a couple of weeks ago.
Amazing performance.
And we talked to him, and that's getting ready to come out now too. But it was amazing to hear, the stresses and the strains that his body went through. But you guys, even though you both had a strain, each one of you had to focus in a different way. So I'm thinking Brandon had to more or less live his ride at 70 to 75% of his heart rate. You, on the other hand, you probably had to ride more in the level of 90 to 95% of your heart rate at all times. So my question to you would be, which one of those two things do you think is harder? Is it harder to ride all the way to the wall for an hour or to ride 24 hours at 75% of your ability?
Oh, it's hard. It's a good question. It's really hard to say. I would say it's way more predictable and easy to plan the hour ride than that 24 hours ride. There are so many factors that can affect the performance during 24 hours. The nutrition, the weather, like the needs, the stops, and the hour. I had good advisors. So for me, it's more easy.
Great. Yeah. So, hey, all I can really say, moving forward is that, I mean, this was an outstanding ride, and I'm kind of wondering what's left in your future right now. I see you have a bronze medal from the London Games 2012. You participated in the last games. Any plans as you move forward towards 2028 Los Angeles?
That would be amazing to be at the Summer Games in Los Angeles in USA. It's pretty far away. There are a lot of things going on at with our cycling federation. The new classification is coming out, and then we are still fighting to be not consolidated with the NILA hand cyclist. The women are still a little bit disadvantaged in that competition, like it was in Paris. So I really hope the changes will happen to our favor, and that will give me more motivation to prepare for Los Angeles for sure.
Svetlana, thank you so much. It was really enlightening to hear about this, and I just can't emphasize enough that it's an outstanding achievement. You've set the bar pretty high, so now we'll see who can beat it.
I will be really happy if women in hand cycling take up that competition and try to break the records. The records are there to break them, right?
Undoubtedly. Congratulations.
Thank you.